Welcome to Up to the Minute. It is Wednesday, September the 16th. Glad to have you with us. We got a great show for the next half hour. Going to be talking about some music, maybe the Monterey Pop Festival. Maybe we'll talk about that and more. And we've got a couple of special guests. We'll get to those in a moment. Brittany Pacheco joining us now from her home studio. And Brittany, you're dressed for the show with your tie-dye on.
I am, Todd. I'm excited about today's show just because we're talking about music. You know, music is obviously an essential part of many, if not all, people's lives. So that's really awesome to talk about here on Up to the Minute. But I just want to take the time to remind everyone to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget about our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And last but not least, to our audience, we need your help. We need your help to grow our podcast audience. So if you click the share button at the bottom of this post to share it on your news feed. It'll help us greatly so that we can share this awesome information, especially about music, to everyone else who is not following us on social media.
That's right, Brittany. Thank you. Stick around. We'll get back to you later in the show. Of course, it's Wednesday. HCC Police Chief Greg Cunningham joins us every Wednesday. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I am doing great, and we look forward to speaking with you. I know you're a music aficionado, and I imagine you listen to a little bit of classic rock.
Yeah, I absolutely do. To be honest with you, I'm very, very excited we're going to have this conversation today. It'll be fun.
All right, Chief, we'll be back with you shortly. But our first guest, he's an HCC instructor. He's been on a couple of our shows before. You may recognize him. He's also an author who wrote the book, The Hippies, a 1960s history. We're joined this morning by John Moretta. Good morning, John. It's good to see you again.
Good morning, my friend. Good to see you.
We appreciate you being here, and it's always fascinating to speak with you. I'm a music fan myself, big classic rock fan. Maybe I know a little too much about classic rock, but we want to have a discussion with you. First off, the Monterey Jazz Festival just made an announcement. You know, we're living in a world of COVID. A lot of festivals are having to go online. Live music is literally non-existent right now. So the Monterey Jazz Festival just announced they are going online. First, John, I'm going to ask you, have you ever fathomed that we could live in a world where live music is extinct because of a pandemic?
No, there's no way. 6, 7, 8 months ago, if you had mentioned that, there's no way I would have said, you're delusional. But live music is, ever since the 60s, live music has been the most important venue.
It sure has, and it's heartbreaking for a lot of the musicians who depend on those gigs, and right now, unfortunately, it's not happening. Let's talk about the Monterey. Of course, we mentioned the Monterey Jazz Festival. In your book, you talk extensively about something you think was more important than Woodstock, and that was the Monterey Pop Festival, which celebrated its 50th anniversary. You were at the one 50 years ago. Tell us about that.
It's very interesting. My buddies and I, we were still in high school. I was a junior in high school. Junior to senior year, high school, June '67. And we had heard about it on the radio, the local AM radio stations. FM was not quite there yet. So big Phil Donahue out of San Francisco, he was the #1 DJ at the time, and he was promoting the heck out of this festival. And it evolved out of the Monterey Jazz Festival, which they had for years. Clint Eastwood was a big participant and sponsor of that jazz festival, jazz nut. So they decided Lou Adler, Mamas and Papas, John Phillips, Paul Simon, a whole host, big name rock and rollers. Decided, no, let's make it a pop festival. Let's make it about rock and roll, because the primary purpose was to feature the new San Francisco sound. Yeah, the acid rock. Airplane, Dead, Canned Heat, they all show up. There was in my book, I mentioned that there was a big battle between Lou Adler and the other sponsors, because the San Francisco bands really did not like the LA scene. They saw John Phillips, the Mamas and Papas, and these individuals as all part of that LA scene that was plastic and hip, pseudo hip, and all this. So they went to San Francisco several times, convinced these bands play, right? They all played virtually for free, okay? And so that was the big draw right there. You also had Ravi Shankar. You also had the association from Hawaii. You had veritable who's who of the scene of by '67. The association opened Friday night. We missed that. So anyway, we heard about this. We decided to go down on Sunday, last day of the festival. And as I was telling you earlier, we got there in like late morning, early afternoon. I can't remember exactly the time, but near Monterey was Fort Ord, right? The Marine Army base. And so they were letting all the young Army guys in for free. We were still in high school, had short hair and everything. What kind of moved with this flow of Army guys? We got them for free, you know? And we saw, who did we see? We saw Jimmy, we saw Hendrix, which was phenomenal. We saw Canty, saw Mamas and Papas. They were late that night. Janis Joplin, Big Brother. They did 2 performances. Saw the Dead. They performed the last night. And ironically, the guy who stole the show, the only guy, or performer, excuse me, who got a standing ovation was Ravi Shankar.
Wow.
Who performed for almost 3 hours. And he was phenomenal.
John, let me ask you this. You know, when you see these icons, you know, Hendrix just blows your mind because he's become so iconic. I remember the first concert I went to was Queen with Freddie Mercury, you know, and I think back at that now, and that was an iconic moment. Mm-hmm. But seeing it, I don't know if I realized 40 years later that I'd be looking back as an iconic moment. Did you know when you were seeing the Dead and Hendrix, the Mamas and Papas, that these were going to be legendary stars 40, 50 years from now?
Oh, no, there's no way. I mean, rock and roll had become such an all-encompassing sound that we looked upon these guys as just another great performer. No, the iconic status with Janis Joplin, Hendrix. I mean, having committed suicide kind of helps her.
Yeah.
Sadly. It's like Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
Doors. You know, you had to get a whole bevy of these guys who just go into the drugs and stuff, you know,
sure.
Are self-destructive.
Let me ask you this too, John. What would be the reaction of the hippie counterculture if they went through a pandemic like we were going through today? What would have been their reaction as opposed to the reaction of the 20-somethings or the millennials that today?
Yeah, I think this is just purely speculative, but from what my research has revealed, because the hippies were so cognizant, conscious of mind, body, soul, they would have realized that this was serious. Probably many of them would have went up the country, like back to communes,
yeah,
which were already starting to proliferate anyway by 67, 68. I mentioned this in my book. By the end of 67 into 68, many of the real traditional hippies, real progenitors of the movement, had become very disillusioned with the urban environment. They realized that utopia was not going to be found in an urban environment. I don't give a damn if it's San Francisco, New York, or Los Angeles. That really was the catalyst for the commune back to nature, back to the country movement. So if you look at the history of communes, they really start to increase in their prevalence. 68 to around 72. It's kind of the heyday, the high point, the crescendo of the communard movement. And if you look at the I talk about in my book, Morning Star, The Farm, and Drop City, those were all started late 60s by the urban hippie movement. And they would have taken this very seriously, very seriously.
One of the themes in your book, kind of an overarching theme, is what happened to the hippies. Nothing happened to them, and you're a testimony. They're still around today, maybe just living a little bit different life.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's always been a counterculture in American history since time began. History of this country began, even during the rebellion period, war for independence. So there's always been a counterculture. So And so you see a lot of young people in their 20s and 30s, the quote hipsters, right? Pseudo hippies. They're a lot different than the hippies were, but they still view themselves as bohemian, outre, other, counterculture, whatever term you want to use, right? But if you resurrected an old hippie, right, brought them into, say, New York City, East Village, look at the hipsters, they would say, oh, these guys are a bunch of plastics. These guys are fake. These guys aren't real.
They aren't the real hip. John, let me ask you this too. It's maybe a controversial question, but right now we're seeing a movement in this country involving protests. Let's talk about the protests back in the 60s, the message they were able to get across compared to what's going on now. Are they two of the same thing? What was your take on that?
No, I've written a couple blogs on this. If you look at 68, everybody thinks 1968 was a watershed year. There's no doubt about it. They had the Tet Offensive. I mean, there wasn't if you start in January of 68 and go through December of 68, there wasn't a month where something cataclysmic perception time occurred, right? And you had police violence then. You had police brutality then. Chicago, Democratic Convention. So but it was, you look at the police violence then. I know I'm probably bothering the chief a little bit on this. It was not racially motivated, racially directed like it appears to be today, right? I mean, you had more white kids in Chicago, for example, because there were no African-American kids. They were smart. They stayed home in Chicago, right? In fact, I mentioned in my book, African-Americans said, this is white folks' thing. Y'all go do that. We don't want, you getting beat up is going to create news. Us getting beat up, that's new. That's not new. No one cares about that. And so if you look at Chicago in particular, with the police violence and the confrontations there, in fairness, the protesters, the Hippies and others, Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, they did provoke the police. Police have to unload upon them the way they did? No. And remember, the police were acting on behalf of the mayor of Chicago, Richard Daley, who was notorious for his oppression of counterculture movements, protests, demonstrations. I mean, he shot first, asked questions later. He's legendary for that. But if you look at today's protests, they're much different, much different. In 68, they were sporadic, they were spontaneous, highly combustible at that moment. Once Richard Nixon's elected on a definitive law and order platform, Donald Trump's law and order is nothing compared to Nixon's. You start to see these white kids who are all upper middle class anyway, it's not worth it. We're going home.
Yeah.
Whether it's the hippies or SDS or other student activists, you're not going to throw up the barricades. Today, you got young people symbolically and maybe literally putting up the barricades in Seattle, in Portland. You didn't put those barricades up. This is not France 1790s. This is not France 1968. No, the French know how to put on a revolution. Whether it was in the 1790s or 1968, and even now with the yellow jacket guys. French know how to put on revolutions. Americans, we're not revolutionary people. We're not. We simply are not. I mean, if one thing my research has revealed, we are middle of the road, moderate, capitalist, consuming, always have been since the end of World War II, which is hard.
John, we appreciate you joining us this morning. It's always fascinating to speak with you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your perspective. If you're interested in John's perspective, check out his book. You can check it out on Amazon. We'll have a link and the title of the book in the social media post for the show. John, it's always great to see you. We hope to see you again soon.
Anytime, my friend. Good to see everybody.
All right.
Stay well. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Chief Greg Cunningham joins us every Wednesday. Chief, it's good to see you again this morning. Thanks for being here. I want to start with September 12th was a very significant day. It was National Police Women's Day. Maybe you could talk a bit about that to kind of kick things off.
Yeah, sure can. It's really interesting. We just had a little social conversation, how police are really trying to work their way back into building quality relationships with the community. This is really a big piece, right? So women in policing is a new thing. I don't have quite as many years as John has, but I'm not very far behind him. And when I first started in policing, a female partner was, unheard of, right? Women weren't in policing. And here we are just one career later, albeit a long career, but one career later, and we're not only recognizing that women are in this profession, but they've brought so much to the table, and they do such a spectacular job. So what's happening now is this movement of celebrating women in law enforcement is kind of become a national day. Unfortunately, it hasn't quite taken on the same status as Breast Cancer October or No Shave November and those kind of things. But by talking about it and kind of paying attention, these ladies work really, really hard to do this job, and taking a moment and a breath and recognizing all of that hard work and the fact that they're playing in a very, very competitive world. Right. Really says a lot for the young women that are involved in this organization or involved in this profession.
Very important day, something worth remembering for all of us. On September
12th. The 12th, the day after, okay? The day after the 11th.
The day after the 11th, right?
Here, right?
A time when you look back at that, I kept seeing memes on Facebook and social media about that iconic day after the real September the 11th. And September 12th was a special day for this whole country because it seemed like we all came together as Americans back at that time.
Absolutely.
Chief, I want to ask you about some things going on our campuses. Financial aid and testing start at select campuses soon. And also people need to keep in mind as we may be returning in some shape or form to campuses that you'll need to look for childcare, parking passes, and student IDs.
Yeah, so it's really, I think the message I want to send to everybody is, number one, please pay attention to the communications coming out. The plans now are in October, we're going to bring back some students that need to come back for those labs or clinicals, and that'll start to happen. But we're also opening up student services issues, right? So those of you that have needed to talk to a financial aid person or needed some help getting registered or counseling, that availability is also going to start around that period of time. Now, it's all done by appointment. You can't just walk up and say, okay, I'm here, I want to talk to somebody. So it's all kind of done by appointment. And I really encourage you guys, if you were struggling with getting financial aid documents done right, or you wanted to register for school, but you couldn't figure out what you ought to take, this is really an opportunity to get in front of it and maybe even get in there in time for a second start or a third start if that happens down the road. So please pay attention to the communication coming out. I think there's 6 locations they've identified that'll be operating during this period of time. And what they're trying to do is make sure that each one of those 6 kind of offers the same types of student services and support that each one of the other ones does. So it doesn't matter which one you go to is what they're trying to get to.
And Chief, we want to reemphasize to folks that when you do return to campuses, parking passes, you may need to get those again. And also student IDs could be an issue. So like you said, watch your communications and make sure that your passes or your student IDs aren't out of date.
Yeah, and Todd, let me jump on the student ID one because that's kind of gotten bigger than the bread box lately. So there are some student I want to say centers of excellence, but I know that's not the term. There is some course study that some of our students can take where they leave HCC and they do clinical work, maybe in the medical center, or they're required to do part of their coursework by operating with other organizations outside of HCC. Those folks have a tendency to need a good ID, right? So if you are one of those students that needs to go into the medical center or needs to be able to present a valid ID, please get a hold of your program director. That program director can get you a good up-to-date ID. For the rest of the students who may have an expired ID, please keep it. Please carry it with you when you come to school, But what HCC has decided is we're going to go ahead and overlook the expiration date on your ID until we can get everybody back in and our badging centers are back up and running. So I strongly encourage you to continue to carry that expired ID, and you can use it for getting access onto campuses and those kind of things as well. But if you're one of those few folks that really have to have a current ID, get a hold of your program directors right away, because we figured out that that's an issue and we know how to fix it for you. So please don't let that be a barrier to anything that you need to do.
Chief, I want to talk to you about some things happening across the nation, particularly a situation that happened over the last few days. And we'll talk about facts. There's a lot of speculation going on, but let's just give the facts. 2 law officers were shot in Los Angeles over the past few days. They were taken to the hospital. We do know as a fact that there were protesters trying to block the entrance of the hospital. We know that the protesters were shouting things at the police or outside of the hospital. Those are facts, folks. I'm not going to go into other things on this because, quite honestly, Chief, the facts are sickening. And the motive behind it, let's just put that aside. But let's get your take on this, which is a very disturbing thing that's happened out of the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's disturbing, and it needs to be a very, very large flag for all of us to see. We've talked right from the beginning of this, Todd, that there were going to need to be hard conversations between law enforcement, government entities, and the community, and we were going to need to find a way to come together. And I'll be honest with you, the communities that are not doing that are not being successful. What you saw there, it's horrific. It was an assassination, plain and simple. Wherever you are in your politics, if anybody believes that what happened in that video was okay for any reason, you gotta check yourself. I'm all in for justice, and if somebody has done something wrong, great. Let's bring them to trial. Let's figure it out. And if death sentence is what they get, then let them get it, right? But there's a process. If going out on the street and taking this types of things into your own hands is just unacceptable. And if that single event hasn't warned everybody in our audience that it is time to take a step back and breathe and rethink about how we're going to get this thing done. We need to go back to those conversations we talked about, Todd. There haven't been near enough of them yet. Everybody is screaming and yelling about what they're going to do, right? Politicians defunding without ever having a conversation on the front end. We need to talk about this. We need to find solutions that work, because public safety is going to start to suffer big time if we can't get in front of this and do it pretty quickly.
And Chief, I think you really hit the nail on the head with the conversations is where it starts. If we don't talk about things in communities, things will not get better. And it's a time to start with that. And I think we all need to be better in some shape or form, or be aware of what's happening out there. Chief, you've also got something about a new road coming up. Maybe you can tell us about your new road up north.
Yeah, I was actually only teasing about that, but I think you guys know I bought a little property up on the north side, and I got my road built, and it was bigger than a bread box. Boy, I got to tell you what, if I'd have known you were going to talk about this, Todd, I'd have sent you a picture of it. I got a drone shot of the best road you have ever seen in your life.
So you built a road to your property, is what you're saying?
Absolutely, right. So I want to put a house on it eventually, but you can't get a concrete truck in if there's not a road.
Yeah.
So we've been trailblazing a road and got that thing down now, and it looks absolutely gorgeous.
Well, Chief, we got to see some pictures, and I do hope that once this pandemic is gone, there's going to be some type of barbecue situation happening up there, because we'd love to be up there for that.
You betcha, absolutely. I will host that party all day long. However, bring your work boots, because I'm not going to give it to you for free.
Yeah, put us to work. That's fine with us. Brittany loves working outdoors. We'll sign her up anytime for it. So
I
Nope.
don't know if you can
Nope.
see her, but I can see her. She's shaking her head so hard you can almost hear everything rattling around the room.
oh, yep, that's right.
I'm what you call an inside cat. Just saying.
Well, Chief, we appreciate you being here, getting your perspective. It's always good to have great discussion. And that's one way, when we look at things happening across the country, we need to talk about those things and hopefully find a solution for them as well.
Absolutely, Todd. And again, I will go anywhere, any place, anytime to have those conversations. And I really hope folks will begin to reach out and talk, because without talking, we're not going anywhere.
Thank you, Chief, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday. Stay safe out there.
I'll do that. You guys have a great week, and we'll talk to y'all later.
All right. Moving on to Brittany, talking about our HCC News and Announcements. Brittany, it's that time of the show. One thing we want to get across to our students, first and foremost, if you're thinking of signing up for Second Start semester, it's not too late.
It's not at all, Todd, because Second Start is just right around the corner. It's starting on September 21st. Now, students, you have until that date to register for classes. So be sure to head over to hccs.edu/now to check out what classes are available and any steps that you need in order to register in case you're a new student. It's all there on that same webpage, hccs.edu/now.
I've got to mention, if you hear noise in the background, during the show, without my knowledge, they've started construction in a unit upstairs. Didn't know anything about it till about 10 minutes ago. So that will be the noise in the background. Not much I can do about that. Students, if you've got questions about tutoring, technology, textbooks, anything, well, we've got an online services toolkit available for you. You can visit the webpage at hccs.edu/online-toolkit. Yes, we'll have that link in this post as well for the show. All in for HCC, Brittany. It's a way of the faculty and staff giving back to our students and raising money for the foundation.
Exactly. So now more than ever, HCC students need our support. So the HCC Foundation is asking us as the faculty and staff to help them overcome financial struggles and stay on track with their classes so they can graduate. And as a former HCC Foundation recipient, I can't tell you how much this made a difference in my life. So show we are HCC strong by donating to the faculty and staff campaign. It's happening now through November 6th. You can sign up for payroll deductions today, and your gift will yield an impact all year. So if you're interested in this, head over to hccs.edu/all-in for HCC. And if you're going to share this information on your social media, be sure to use the hashtag all-in for HCC.
And another thing too, Brittany, that's an incredible fund source for our students. If you were impacted by Hurricane Harvey, it happened 3 years ago. Well, there's funding available for you. And Brittany, I've heard some of the stories on this. Like one student simply needed help in getting transportation to her classes. She had some tire issues, so they were able to issue her some funds to cover those so she can get back and forth from classes. She suffered during Harvey and she was able to benefit through this program, at least getting some funding that you don't have to pay back. It's a scholarship more or less, or a grant. And it's available to our students that need the assistance: tuition, books, transportation, housing, childcare assistance. If you can prove that you had an impact from Hurricane Harvey 3 years ago, then we can help you out through this assistance fund. Visit hccs.edu/Harvey Assistance. Rec sports, well, yep, they're back, Brittany.
They are. They're back with fun, fit, and free events. Now, a lot of these events, I know I've seen questions on social media if they're open to faculty and staff, and the majority of them are. However, there are some events that are just going to be specific for students because of prizes. So students, we are here for you with fall events, including boot camp, Zumba, or as Todd likes to say, Zumba on Zoom, and twerk fitness. It's a real thing, apparently. I'm curious about it.
Workout.
So as I said, students and staff can participate in the Madden 20 Gamer League Challenge and the NBA Bracket Challenge. So those have prizes, as does a new game called A Minute to Win It. So for more information about any of these free events that I just mentioned, be sure to go follow the HCCS Athletics on their Instagram and Facebook page. We have that information here in this post. And also, if you want to inquire about more specific details, you can email Rexforce at sports@hccs.edu.
Couple of quick things we want to touch on. HCC Talent Engagement has a lunch and learn. They've got some guests coming up, Dr. Janina Arrington, James Mabel, and Demita McLean. Demita is the advisor for Pathways and Case Management, HCC Project Grad lead advisor. Check your emails to register. So look for those and you can join the HCC Talent Engagement Lunch and Learn. Also, Talent Engagement has virtual coffee breaks. Those are happening, one of them Thursday, September 17th. Dr. Mehmet Argin, Dean of Global Energy Center of Excellence. You can join Janet May on a coffee break with special guests. Check your emails for that as well. And the virtual student lobby, Brittany, that's open.
It is open, Todd. We've been talking about this for quite some time. So student services has live help via its virtual lobby. If you want to chat with them via Zoom, if you want a callback, or if you just want to be emailed, there is no appointment necessary. You just need to go to hccs.edu/virtual lobby in order to input your way of communications, and they'll get back to you as soon as possible.
We are running out of time, Brittany. Show's just about over, but tomorrow we've got some special guests joining us. Virtual Family Fun Day, it's tomorrow.
Yay! I love Virtual Family Fun Day. And our guests will be the Bayou City Art Festival, which is going virtual this year, as appropriately done so, like almost everything else. We will talk to Kelly Batterson about how they'll pull that off this year.
And we will have a guest from the HCC administration talking about the fall schedule. We'll talk about that, talk with them about that tomorrow on the show. So make sure you join us there. I've got construction going on upstairs. So, I got a great day ahead of me. I'm about to get off the air and go turn up Metallica real loud to give them a taste of their own medicine. Maybe we'll do that. But Brittany, thank you for being here for today's show. And we appreciate all of you joining us. We'll see you tomorrow morning live at 10 a.m. on Up to the Minute.